And later that day, another child came up to a teacher saying that they were told by this child who shot Abigail, they had a gun, and if the child told anyone, this child who shot Abigail would also shoot them. And then again at the end of the day, another teacher requested to search this child's bag, and they were told no, because it was almost the end of the day to let it go. After Abigail was shot, she got all of the other kids out of the room, and another teacher had to come in and restrain the child.
Here are some real Chuck E. Cheese ghost stories. I was excited for the new Chuck E. Cheese down the street to open. The location took up an old restaurant my grandma used to take me to growing up. My birthday was coming up, and I wanted to be the first one of my class to have my party there. We were having a great time, and this random boy came to play some games with us. I remember playing the clown game with him. He looked a little strange. His clothes were a little dirty, but he was nice. When it was time to eat, we invited him over, but he disappeared. It was weird, but I didn't think anything of it. When it was time to leave, my parents were pulling out of the parking lot, and I saw him staring at me through the window. I had a really weird feeling, and for some reason, I never wanted to go back. That is so scary. Like, where did he go? And why was he staring at him through the window? Here's another one. When I was 16, I was a custodian at my local Chuck E. Cheese. It was a pretty gross job cleaning all of the crap out of the playground area, but overall it was pretty lax. One day I was inside the playing area and heard a crawling noise, like a child was in there with me. A little girl came around the corner asking me where her mom was. Sometimes kids would hide here after closing, and I thought it was one of those situations. I told her I would call her mom for her, but when I got out of the playroom, there was no trace of her. I looked everywhere and never saw her again. I worked there for 3 months after that and never had an experience with her ever again. It was one of my first ghost experiences, and it will stay with me forever. I would have quit. That is so scary. Okay, last one. I was a manager at a Chuck E. Cheese. Whenever I would open the restaurant, I would get there a little earlier than my employees. I'd make sure the stage/party areas were looking good, and that is where this story takes place. The animatronic Chucky was always scary, but I never thought anything of it. But this time, I felt like someone was there with me. I looked at the animatronic, and I swear on my life till this day, I watched it turn on and move on its own. This happened to me a few times working there, and it always terrified me. My employees would sometimes report the same thing happening at closing time when no one else was there. No wonder why Five Nights at Freddy's exists. Have you ever had a haunting experience at Chuck E. Cheese? Let me know in the comments.
Spooky story time. A follower named Chanel sent me the story all the way from Trinidad, and we're going to call it The Boy. Chanel says that this happened a few years ago, but she was working as a bartender. She worked the night shift, but she would normally be home at about 3 a.m. She says that her mom and her 3-year-old little brother were visiting from the United States in Trinidad, so she gave them her bedroom. She says that in her culture, they say that if you get home past midnight, to enter your home walking backwards. That way, if there's anything negative or anything evil, it won't follow you inside. She says that this specific night, she failed to do that because she was so tired, so she just went right inside. So she went right on inside, took a shower, called her boyfriend, got comfortable, lay down to get ready for bed, and she closed her eyes to start praying. In that moment, she hears her little brother crying. She opens her eyes, she sits up, and she sees him standing at the foot of her mattress. She calls out to him. He stops crying, and then he slowly starts walking backwards, like walking away from her. She gets up, starts talking to him, starts walking towards him, trying to calm him down, like, hey, baby, are you okay? Whatever. He stops crying, and in that moment, she hears her mom say, Chanel, who are you talking to? She turns around and yells, I'm talking to Nicholas, Mom. He was standing right here by my bed, and he was crying. And then Mom says, what are you talking about? He's asleep right next to me. Chanel turns around to look at that little boy, and he literally is backing away, and he walks through the closed bedroom door. Hell nah. She said that this was the one and only time that she saw anything like this. She's obviously seen and witnessed some paranormal, some spirits and shit, but nothing like this. Do you think it's because she didn't walk inside her home backwards? What do you guys think? Thank you so much to Chanel for sending me this spooky story. If you guys have any other stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
This is why smuggling drugs or getting involved in any type of illegal activity is not worth it,
at all, because it can cost the rest of your entire life. Ella May Cully, she's a British teenager. She's 18 years old and she's from Billingen on Teesside. She was studying in the UK to become a nurse, traveling, and she went to the Philippines. She started posting on TikTok as any young person on vacation, on holiday would do. But then one day she stopped posting on her TikTok and on her social media, and she stopped replying to her family and friends. When her family were not able to get in contact with her, that's when they reported her missing. Neil, her dad, and her auntie then got on a plane and flew all the way to Bangkok to try and find her and figure out what has happened to her. They found out that Bella was not in Thailand, but she was 4,000 miles away in Georgia, where she was arrested on alleged substance smuggling. Luggage inspection found 12 kg of marijuana and 2 kg of hash found in her travel bag, and they are trying to investigate whether she was trying to hand these substances over to somebody else. These types of crimes, they do not take lightly. They take this very, very seriously in these types of countries. I am talking about life in prison seriousness. The prison she's been held in is known to be very horrific, with alleged sewage-filled cells and cells so cramped with more than 3 people being rammed inside them. In this same prison in 2006, 7 prisoners were killed and 17 were injured by the prison guards. However, saying this, Miss Cully's lawyer has spoken out and said that she was in good health, but he would not describe her as an adequate adult. But her lawyer does not speak English, and they have been communicating through a translator. There was a pre-trial hearing on the 13th of May where Miss Cully told the court that she was pregnant. Right now, she's still being detained, and apparently there's a lot more different groups of people who are actually involved in this whole operation. This is a quote from a spokesperson saying, "The arrest was a result of a joint operation between multiple departments, and if she was found guilty, Miss Cully could face up to 20 years in jail or life imprisonment." Can't find her TikTok anyway. It looks like it might have been removed, but I have found some screenshots what people have reshared online. You can see she was posting some TikToks promoting crime and like wads of cash. So I generally don't know what's going to happen to her. It is quite a deep case. So let me know what you guys think on what's going to happen, if she's going to make it back to the UK, if she's going to get life imprisonment.
So this guy
about you, and there's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only.
He doesn't live that far away.
Shout out to King Saul's boss in the
3 hours away from where they are. The uncle owns a lot of cabins that are out in the middle of nowhere, and he rents them out from time to time. During the visit, the uncle had told his girlfriend and the girlfriend's dad that he was going to leave for a few months out of the country, and they were trusting them with the keys to the cabins. The uncle tells them that they can go whenever they want and just check up on the property from time to time, because he doesn't plan on renting them out, being that he was going to be out of the country and he just didn't want to deal with anything that would happen. But yeah, he let them know, hey, you can go whenever you want, you can go with your friends, it's not a big problem. Around that same time, he explains that he was going through a really rough time at school and at home. At school, he needed to turn in this really important project that would make him graduate. However, he couldn't get any peace at home because he had gotten into a fight with his roommate. He was telling all this to his girlfriend, and that's when the girlfriend's dad overheard his situation and said, hey, maybe you can go stay in one of the cabins so that you can finish your project. They explained to him that the only thing he might not have would be the Wi-Fi, but honestly, he's like, I wanted that. I needed to unplug. I needed to focus on this project, so I took them up on the offer. He ends up driving up to the cabin, and the cabins were actually really far away from where he lived, but again, he said he needed that space. He needed to focus. When he finally makes it into the cabin, he notices that there's no other cabins like close by to that one. There's no little stores, like there's nowhere for him to go and like get anything. Even his phone wouldn't get like very little signal. There were moments where the phone would connect and he would get a whole bunch of texts and calls, and then it would disconnect and his phone was basically had no service at all. When he gets into the cabin, he ends up opening all the windows just to get some fresh air flowing. He said that the cabin smelled a little bit old, like old wood, but he could tell nobody had been there in a little while. None of that really mattered, honestly, because he just really wanted to focus on his work. So he pulled out his laptop, started working, but he doesn't realize what moment he accidentally fell asleep on his laptop. He actually woke up because his phone started ringing, and when he got his phone, it was like an unknown number. He almost didn't answer because again, he didn't know whose number that was, but he still did. And when he picked up the phone, he said that it was a very weird, strange voice, very slowly saying,
Don't forget to close the windows.
He got chills running down his spine, and when he turned to look at the windows, he realized that he indeed had left the windows open before he had fallen asleep. He immediately gets up and closes all the windows, but he still didn't understand who could have made that phone call, because the only people who knew that he was there was his girlfriend, the girlfriend's dad. They wouldn't prank call him like this, and it also wasn't their phone number that had called him. He started to think that maybe somebody was observing him, somebody was watching him, but there was no other like cabins or houses or places around him that somebody could hide behind to do that. And again, nobody knew that he was there. It's not like he made the crazy loudest sound, so that really threw him off. He was so scared that he grabbed all of his belongings, closed that cabin up, and left. He ended up going to a hotel for the night, where he did end up finishing his project. He explains that he never told his girlfriend or the girlfriend's dad what happened, but every once in a while his girlfriend's like, oh, we should go to the cabin one night, and he's like, I don't know how many times she's gonna ask me where I'm telling her no, but I don't even want to tell her what happened up there. But what he does know is that he does not want to go back there. But what do you guys think happened?
Do you ever think how you can live with somebody, sleep next to them every single night, yet you still don't really know who they are? There's this guy, and he thought his wife was just playing silly little pranks on him until the pranks got really dark. He realized that his wife wasn't just trying to scare him, but she was enjoying doing it. Here's what's happened. He'll be cooking dinner in the kitchen doing his own thing, and he'll feel eyes on him. Like, you know when you feel somebody's watching you, and he'll turn around and she'll just be there, standing, watching him with her eyes wide open. He'd catch her standing behind a wall or a curtain, just watching him, silent, does not say a word, does not laugh. And then when he acknowledges her standing there like a weirdo, just watching her with her eyes wide open, she'll just run off and not say a thing. It got weirder and weirder. She would squeeze into cupboards and just watch him, or go under the bed and watch him until he notices. And when he noticed, she wouldn't even acknowledge it. She wouldn't laugh. She would just kind of get up and just continue like nothing ever happened. All of a sudden, she just stopped. And one night over dinner, he brought it up jokingly and said, oh, I don't see you peeping at me anymore. And she replied, maybe I'm just better at it. After that, it started to spiral. One night, he's in the shower with the bathroom door locked. And as he's showering, he hears a sound. He pulls the curtain and nobody's there. So he pulls back the curtain, turns around, and she's in the shower with him, standing there, eyes wide open, soaking wet. He then freaks out, screams at her, and tells her to leave. She's now left the bathroom. He starts to hear this heavy, excited, like breathing sound. And he's in the bathroom terrified. He's too scared to open the door because he's scared his wife's standing outside the bathroom door. He's also too scared to look under the door because he's scared he's going to see her eyes peeping onto the door. You can just hear this excited, heavy breathing. It just keeps going on and on and on until he realizes the sound is not coming from outside of the door. He turns around and looks into the bathroom cupboard where his wife is there standing, staring at him, smiling and heavy breathing. That was it. He grabs his bag, runs and drives all the way to his brother's house, tries to explain it to his brother, like, this is not a prank, she's haunting me. He's decided to stay at his brother's house for the night. And later that evening, they're all chilling together. They see his wife
still acting weird, but Andrew said like most things were like too small to mention, and he wasn't necessarily a victim. Like, Mark would stay out all night, he wouldn't come out of his room, he would just act weird and erratic around the apartment. But the final straw comes one night when Andrew wakes up to use the bathroom, and he goes in the bathroom, turns on the lights, and finds Mark eating his own feces out of the toilet. Andrew freaks out naturally, screams at him, calls him a freak, and he said looking back it was really harsh, but he was just so shocked in the moment. And everything else that Mark had been doing just really made him blow up. And Mark just looks at him and tells him to grow a pair. And Mark goes back to doing what he was doing. And Andrew's so freaked out that he packs a bag and he leaves to go get a hotel that night. He calls him in the morning. He's like, I don't want to be roommates with you anymore. Like, you need to move out. And Mark starts crying on the phone. He's like begging him not to kick him out. And a few hours later, he's like, okay, I'll leave. And Andrew also ended up switching apartments because he said he just didn't feel safe anymore. A week after they break the lease and move out, he finds out that Mark has attacked someone at a train station. The person he attacked retaliated, and Mark was unalived by his wounds. There's a little more to the story. The details are very graphic, so I couldn't include them because it's TikTok. But Andrew ended his email by saying that he has actually blamed himself a few times for Mark's unaliving. and he suspects that he was at waves of schmugs and that he really wishes that he had called someone sooner. Andrew will be seeing the comments, so be nice. And keep sending me your creepy, crazy, spooky story times, and I will keep posting them in this playlist. So I have polls on my Insta every day of which story you guys want to hear next, so follow me there.
Understand, Lake Lanier is a very large lake, and there are all of these small little islands that are positioned about that you can actually take your boat to, you can camp at, and some of these places have cabins. Now, there was this guy named Ryan. Ryan said that every summer, him and his friends would go out to Lake Lanier to their friend's father's cabin, and they would stay and spend like a couple days. Well, this particular summer in July, they decided they would go out to the cabin and spend 5 nights there. Well, in order to get to the cabin, you have to get on a boat. You have to take it a half a mile and then get on the dock and then go out to the cabin. So they make it there, and later that night, they got a big campfire going. They started to do a little bit of drinking, and they were having a good time when they decided to go down by the dock. As they're all hanging out on the dock, screaming and laughing, they hear a loud splashing sound, which sounded kind of like a fish jumping in the water. And at the time, they thought it was a fish. Hey, we should go get our fishing poles. And they start looking around to see if they could figure out like where the weights in the water was. But as they look out, that's when one of the friends says, "What is that? Like, what is that?" And they are all directed towards something in the water. And it is lit up by the moonlight. As they take a closer glance, they could see what looks like a head with its chin above the water. It has this black stringy hair, pale white face, and it didn't have any eyes. And they're like, "No, that can't be real. Like, what is that?" And, they're just confused. Like, why is there like a head just chilling in the water? Well, they started discussing amongst themselves, like, maybe it's just some kind of bird, like a loon, and it's dunking its head in the water and it just looks like a head. And they're like, yeah, that's probably what's going on. So they go back to the cabin and they start drinking some more. Well, Ryan has to use the bathroom. So he walks back out to the dock and he starts going. He looks over in that direction where they had seen this head, and he sees the head again, except this time it is closer to the dock, and it's just sort of looking at him, moving its head back and forth. But it's staying stationary. It is not moving through the water. It is not floating. And he's like, how can this thing still be there? So he runs and gets his friends, and it's like, the head is still out there. And they're like, this cannot be real. Like, this isn't happening. Well, they discuss amongst themselves again, and they say, you know what? It must just be like some kind of log, and we're mistaking it for a head. So they go back to the cabin again, and they decided, all right, let's go to bed. So they go into their rooms, and, it was a really hot night, so they had the windows open, and they all fall asleep. Well, that's when Ryan awakes to
about you, and it's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only.
And this went on for like 5
Shout out to
minutes.
King Saul's balls in the building.
Like someone was pacing back and forth between the cabin and the dock. And that's when all of a sudden, Ryan's friend comes running in his room and is like, "We got to get out of here right now. We have to leave." And he's like, "Why? What's going on?" He's like, "Just come on. We have to leave. We have to get out of here." And he's like, "Well, just tell me what is going on." And he's like, "Well, I was asleep in my bed and I woke up. I went to turn over. And when I looked out the window, I seen that head that we seen in the water with its chin kind of lifted above the windowsill, looking at me." And he's like, we need to get out of here right now." So they all left the cabin. They got in the car and they started to drive away. And that's when his friend, just started freaking out, and he was crying and was like, "What was it that we seen? Like, what is that? What was it?" And it just didn't make any sense to him. And they left and got out of there. The next day, they told the person's father who owned the cabin. He went out there, he checked, he didn't find anything. But still to this day, Ryan says that friend was affected by whatever he's seen that night.
Never make fun of a bruja. So this guy says that he got really into listening to people's paranormal stories and things like that, so much to the point that one day he went up to his parents and asked them if they've ever experienced anything. When he asked his parents, he noticed that his dad got really pale and serious, and the dad decided that he was going to tell him a story because it has been eating him up inside. So the dad, Don Manuel, said that when he was little, he had a best friend named Gina. He explains that Gina was always a little rebel, always up to no good, but it was always fun to be around her. All the kids in school had a biggest crush on Gina, but he always saw Gina as a sister. He said they always had a really nice relationship, but out of nowhere, Gina started acting really weird. One day, Gina goes up to Don Manuel and tells them that she knows a really cool magic trick, but that that this magic trick was really dangerous. She explains to him that if he wanted to see that magic trick, they were going to have to sneak out in the middle of the night, and they were going to have to go to the place that everybody in that town was scared of. People were really scared of that land because they said that that's where the witches would go to. At one point, people tried like growing crops there and nothing would grow, nothing happened, so people would try to stay away from that place. He didn't say yes to her right away. It was after like weeks and weeks of convincing that he finally agreed to sneak out and go to that dead land with Gina. Where the dead place was, there was like a big, kind of like a foresty place with trees. It was only in that area that nothing grew. It was just dead land. So when they get there, Gina tells him that he has to go hide behind the tree and that no matter what happens, you need to stay behind that tree and don't ever come out at all until I come and get you. And Don Manuel agreed. So he stays behind the tree and he's watching Gina, and she walks to that dead land straight in the middle, and he has a bag next to her. He notices that she pulls out like white powder out of her bag. What this white powder was, he has no idea. Gina starts saying something and he realizes that what she's saying is not Spanish. It sounds like a completely different language. He says that it almost sounds like she's singing it, and as she's saying those words, she's forming like a circle, but she's not completely closing the circle with that white powder. He noticed when she was just about to close the circle, she actually walks to the middle of it, makes some sort of symbol, walks out, and then she finally closes that circle. Gina then walks in front of the tree that he's hiding behind, extends her arms, and she's still like singing or saying those things, but now she's saying it out to the sky. Don Manuel cannot believe what he's seeing, because as she's saying these things, he's noticing like balls of fire getting closer and closer to the area that they are. He said more and more balls of fire start coming and moving in circular motions, and then out of nowhere, one of these balls of fire just falls down from the sky, and it sounds like a woman screaming, and it lands in that circle that Gina had just created. Don Manuel says that that ball of fire almost got a little smaller and it was contained in that circle, and it almost looked like it was trying to escape that circle, but something was keeping that ball of fire in there. That's when Gina pulls her arms down, looks back at Don Manuel and says, "Did you like my trick?" Don Manuel is terrified and asks Gina what he's looking at, like, what is that? Gina says, "It's a witch. It's a witch. My grandma taught me how to catch them and I trapped her in there." So Don Manuel is like, "Well, what are you going to do with her? What's going on?" And Gina says, "Nothing. Let's leave her there. She already saw me. There's nothing she can do. I trapped her." Gina then walks closer to where the circle is, starts taunting the witch, like, "Ha, you can't do anything. I trapped you. There's nothing you can do about it." And then she walks back to where Don Manuel is. In that moment, Don Manuel says that he heard a voice coming from where that circle was. Gina turns around and it was almost like they were having a conversation, but he couldn't understand because it seemed like a completely different language. He says that that's when Gina turned to him, looked very scared, and tells them, "Let's go home, let's go," and they start running out of that place. When they get to Don Manuel's house and he's about to sneak back in, that's when Gina tells him, "Hey, please don't tell your parents and don't tell my grandmother any of this." Don Manuel tells her, "Why did your grandmother even show you this trick?" Gina tells him, "It's because she didn't teach me. She had a book and I read it and it worked. But the witch got really mad, so don't tell anybody, please." Don Manuel says that he sneaked into his house. Gina went about her way, but Gina never got home. No one heard from her again after that. Don Manuel says that he thinks that the family knows exactly what happened. That even though it was a long time ago and maybe they didn't have like technology they do now, the family didn't even try looking for Gina, which is why he thinks they know exactly what happened to her. And obviously he was like, this is something that you should never make fun of and never play around with. And have you asked your parents if they have a story that they might want to share with you? Can you imagine asking your parents, "Oh, do you know any experiences?" And then hearing that. Anyway, what do you guys think?
Que sí, ya se ya se prendieron unas, ya se están apagando. La que está en la punta. La que estaba en la punta no estaba prendida y se acababa de prender. Mira, se están prendiendo. Mira. Sí.
Sauce the boss in the building.
If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and today I'm going to be talking about a story that I've been kind of putting off making the video for. There's a huge driving factor on this, and now I'm going to be fully transparent about this. I'm not a fan of making videos about demonic things or demons specifically because every single time I've made a video, whether it's my personal experience or if it's someone else's, I hear things in either the background or in the audio, and I have to reshoot it, something every single time. I've also had instances where my dogs are growling at things that are not there, so you get the gist on why I'm a little hesitant to make videos about demonic things. But without further ado, let's get into it. The story comes from Lexi, who lives in West Virginia and lives in a very haunted house. She says that the hauntings started around the time when she was 6. Just for context purposes, she was 4 when her parents got a divorce, and her mom started seeing this man when she was around 6 years old, and shortly after, all of these hauntings started. And at first it was small occurrences, like her mom telling her to pick up her toys, so she would do so. And when they would come back, the toys would be scattered all across the floor. And she mentions during these instances, her mom and her both were afraid because they both knew that it was almost impossible for these things to be happening. But they continued to brush off these little noises, these little occurrences, because they could be coincidental. And Lexi says that this continued for 2 years before her mom's boyfriend moved in, and his parents actually lived down the street from Lexi's mom, where all of this stuff is occurring. And one night, Lexi, her mom, and her mom's boyfriend go down to his parents' house to have dinner. A couple of his cousins were over with their kids, and there was this little girl there who was like 2 years older than Lexi at the time. So little girl was 10, Lexi was 8. And when they were playing, this little girl just out of the blue says, "Did you know that there's an old woman who lives in the bedroom upstairs?" And at the time, she thought it was creepy, but she just kind of brushed it off, thinking that the little girl was just trying to scare her. A couple of days later, her mom is walking up the stairs to use the bathroom, and Lexi just tells her mom, "Hey," little girl's name, said that there is a woman who lives in the bedroom upstairs. Her mom kind of turns around and is like, "Which bedroom?" So Lexi walks upstairs, gets to the door, and goes to look in and points and says, "This one." And as she does, she did in fact see a woman standing there, very pale, black hair, and a long nightgown. Lexi specifically said that it looked like it was from the early 1900s. And obviously upon seeing this, Lexi ran downstairs, and her mom was really confused until they got back to their house and she explained the entire situation. Lexi's mom's boyfriend was overhearing this conversation and asked her to describe this woman. And when she did, he then said that they had been seeing that same woman there for years. And this is where things take a turn for the worse. Lexi says from that point on, the encounters in her house that were once very small became very amplified and very scary. And she said specifically that many nights she would feel like there was something in the room with her, even more specifically watching her sleep. But again, she brushed it off because she thought she was just scared. Until she was having a friend sleep over, and her friend woke her up in the middle of the night to specifically tell Lexi that she had seen a woman looking at her from over the footboard, just like this. And Lexi thought it was a joke until her friend described the exact same woman she had been seeing. And I guess things get even worse, because after this instance, Lexi's mom begins telling her that she has been seeing her walk around the house when she's not home. She can hear Lexi talking when she's not home. And Lexi had been seeing this woman in mirrors, like when she's brushing her teeth, for example. And on top of this, and what I think is the scariest, Lexi would hear clapping when nobody else was home, and people talking when nobody else is home. And most recently, she tells me that they have 2 dogs, and she brought one of the dogs into her room when she starts to hear the other dog whining and a woman talking to her dog. So immediately she opens the door, tells the other dog, like, "Mom's home." The dog does not get up and greet her mom like he would normally do. And when Lexi walks out to go see her mom, she finds out that her mom is not home, her car is not in the driveway, and she is still at work. So again, she goes back in her room, closes the door, clear as day, hears a woman say, "Come here, where are you?" And she can hear the dog go from whining to barking. So immediately she thinks that someone has broken into her house. She locks her door, gets her softball bat out, and calls her mom to come home immediately. Dog she had with her began barking, and thankfully her mom only works like 10 minutes away, so she rushed home. But during the time of her mom coming home, Lexi began to hear heavy footsteps coming towards her door. And Lexi specifically states that the energy felt so heavy, and when whatever was outside of the door got to the door, it got eerily silent, and the keychain she has on her door began swaying back and forth. Her mom then got home, found no one in the house.
About you, and it's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only. Shout out to King Saul's boss in the build about you, and it's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only.
Pause and say I cut a couple of things out because I was hearing banging noises on my wall. And if you don't know, now you do. I either film early in the morning or late at night.
It's his birthday. Everybody wish him happy birthday.
Oh, this is big right here, y'all. Everybody wish Sauce, the official boss. Oh, man. Happy birthday, man. Let's go. Let's see it in the timeline.
If you're feeling down, just
I like
get you a bag of that.
I like the wish. Sauce.
Can't find him, Mr. Head Ride. Can't greet him with two, only the third eye. Killer vision, PSVR, Rent Hospital.
Sauce the boss.
Be on this track. Accidents and alcohols and conscience.
I like to give a big shout to Ashley Gordon. Somebody say Ashley Gordon. Charlie Fields.
Albert Einstein. Imagination is more important than knowledge.
I like how that sounds.
The tracks. Extraterrestrial blunt. I
like to give a big happy birthday to Sauce the boss.
They fear what they don't understand.
I feel like
I forgive them because they don't really know no better. Hope let them walk on.
I like to give a big shout to Biggie Chapo, the official capo.
How bad do you want success? I was holding my breath.
Shout to Sauce the boss, man. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. I turned 136 into the
You don't quit.
Dancing with chops, I guarantee them in the dreams. Fight the miss, Mr. Clean. Dirty talk, come shots, Listerine. The devil tried to catch me slipping, but my third eye open. I see when I don't know. 40 growing out the ground. The reason the pressure coming, they good enough. You can count on the fingerless hand how many people I can trust. The word
I like to give a big shout to Boys Roseboro.
Bring down